The day my heart shattered was not the day my husband died, nor the night I slept hungry so my son could eat. No, it was the day my own son looked me in the eye and said the words I never thought I would hear from the child I raised with every drop of my soul. "Mom, please don't come to my wedding," he said coldly. "You're too ugly. If you show up, you'll ruin everything. People will laugh at me. They'll laugh at us." For a moment, I thought he was joking. I searched his face for some hint of a smile, a soft laugh that would say it was all in jest. But there was nothing. His eyes were sharp, impatient, embarrassed just by my presence. And then she spoke. His fiancée. The woman he loved so deeply that he was willing to erase me for her. "Look," she said with disdain, "we want a perfect wedding. We don't want pity glances, whispers, or people making fun of how the groom's mother looks. If you try to come, we'll have no choice but to send you to a nursing home. You'll stay there and never disturb us again." Her words pierced deeper than knives. A nursing home? For me? I had given everything, my youth, my health, my dreams for my son. And now, at the most important moment of his life, I was nothing more than an embarrassment, a burden, someone to hide away like a shameful secret. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat alone in my small room, staring at the walls that had once echoed with his laughter when he was little. Every memory came rushing back. His first steps, his first day at school, the times he clung to me when he was scared. I had been his whole world once. Now I was nothing. Tears fell, but I wiped them quickly. A mother's tears must never be her final answer. As I sat in silence, an inner voice whispered, "You are not weak. You are his mother." Mothers do not break. They bend, they endure, and when the time is right, they rise. So I decided. I would not fight him. I would not argue. I would simply smile and wait. Because sometimes silence screams louder than any words. The morning of his wedding arrived. My neighbors all left for the big event, dressed in bright clothes, their faces glowing with excitement. I sat in my empty home, listening to the silence pressing against my chest. No invitation, no phone call, nothing. I opened my old trunk, the one filled with memories, my wedding sari, photographs yellowed with time, and a simple piece of jewelry my husband had once given me. My hand trembled as I pulled out a faded sari. I had worn it long ago on the day I said goodbye to my husband forever. It carried pain, but also dignity. Today it would carry me. I dressed slowly, each fold of the fabric wrapping around me like armor. I looked in the mirror. My face was lined with wrinkles, my hair streaked with gray, my body weak. But my eyes still carried love, and love is never ugly. I whispered to myself, I will not shout. I will not beg. I will only remind him of one truth. Mothers may age, but their love never fades. When I arrived at the wedding hall, all eyes turned. Conversation stopped. I could hear the whispers rise. Who is she? Is that the groom's mother? She looks so fragile. Why would they hide her? I walked slowly, each step heavy but steady. My heart pounded as I saw my son in his suit, standing proud beside his bride. For a moment his eyes met mine. He froze. I saw anger flash across his face. But behind it, just for an instant, I saw something else, fear, maybe even guilt. His bride gasped and hissed, "I told you this would happen. She's here. She's going to ruin everything." But I didn't say a word. I didn't defend myself. I simply smiled at my son. A smile that held my years of sacrifice, my sleepless nights, my unconditional love. It was the same smile I had given him when he took his first steps. The same smile when he brought home his school medals. The same smile when he cried as a child, and I told him everything would be all right. I stood there silent, my eyes locked on him. And in that silence, something began to shift. The hall felt colder as I stood there, still smiling. My hands trembled slightly, but I clasped them together to hide it. My son's face hardened, his jaw tightening as though he wanted to shout, to demand that I leave. His bride tugged at his arm, whispering harshly, but loud enough for others to hear. "She doesn't belong here. Make her leave, now." I watched his lips part, ready to speak those words. The words that would cut me completely out of his life. But before he could, a guest stood up from the crowd. An elderly man, a family friend, one who had known me since my youth. "Is this how you honor your mother?" he asked, his voice firm. The room fell silent. The woman who gave you life, who raised you when you were helpless. And now you call her ugly? You hide her as though she is shame? I saw my son's shoulders tense. He glanced nervously at the guests, their whispers growing louder. The bride's face flushed with anger, her perfect smile cracking. "Please," she hissed, "we don't need this scene." But I still said nothing. I did not defend myself nor accuse them. I let the truth ripple through the crowd on its own. People began murmuring about my sacrifices, about the rumors they had heard of how I raised my son alone, of how I had worked through sickness to send him to school. I lowered my head, not in shame, but in silent prayer. If he could not see me, maybe others could open his eyes. And yet, deep inside, my heart bled. I did not come to be pitied. I came only to witness, to be present at the most important day of my son's life. But instead, my presence had already torn the veil of perfection his bride tried so hard to build. As I stood there, I remembered the nights I had gone without food so he could eat, the days I had walked miles to bring him medicine. And now the thought pierced me. Perhaps he remembered too, and that is why his eyes avoided mine. Guilt is heavy and sometimes heavier than hate. But still, I smiled, because even in his rejection, even in his shame, he was still my son. The ceremony continued, though the atmosphere had shifted. Every eye kept returning to me, to the quiet figure in the faded sari, sitting alone at the corner. The bride's smile looked strained, her perfect image slowly unraveling under the weight of whispers. My son tried to proceed as if nothing had happened. He held her hand, repeated the vows, exchanged rings. But his voice cracked when he said the words, "I promise to honor you." Perhaps the irony echoed too loud in his heart. I closed my eyes, remembering how I once dreamed of this day. I used to imagine standing proudly beside him, blessing his union, hugging his bride as though she were my daughter. Instead, I sat in the shadows, watching the dream crumble into something else entirely. After the vows, the guests gathered to eat. I remained seated. Some avoided me, embarrassed. Others came quietly, touching my hand, whispering words of comfort. One woman leaned down and said, "You are beautiful, you know. Not because of your face, but because of the strength in your eyes." Her words filled my heart with both warmth and pain. If only my son could see me the way strangers did. The bride grew restless. I could see her glaring, her patience thinning. She finally stormed across the room toward me, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. "Why are you still here?" she spat in a low voice. "Do you enjoy humiliating us? Haven't you done enough?" I looked at her calmly, still smiling. "I came only to see my son happy." She scoffed. "Happy? You think he can be happy with you sitting here like this?" Her words stung, but I did not flinch. I simply replied, "One day, when you are a mother, you will understand." Her face twisted with anger. But before she could respond, my son appeared beside her. His hand gripped her arm. His eyes, looked different now. Shaken, restless. Not just anger, but something else. A battle within. For the first time that day, he looked at me, not with shame, not with hatred, but with confusion, as if he was finally seeing the woman behind the wrinkles, behind the frailty, as if my silence was louder than any protest. And in that moment, I saw a flicker of the little boy he once was, the boy who used to cling to me when storms frightened him. It was only a flicker, but it was enough to keep me smiling. The evening grew heavier, the air thick with whispers. Guests tried to celebrate, but the joy of the wedding seemed muted. No matter how hard the bride laughed, her eyes kept darting toward me, filled with irritation, as though my very presence poisoned her perfect dream. I sat quietly, folding my hands in my lap. I ate nothing, drank nothing. I was only there to witness, to bless in silence. But silence has a way of speaking louder than screams. At one point, the photographer approached the family to take pictures. "Let's gather everyone," he called cheerfully. Families assembled, smiles shining for the camera, love displayed for the world to see. And yet when I walked closer, my son quickly raised his hand. "No," he muttered, his voice sharp. "Not her." The photographer hesitated, confused. The bride smirked, and I stepped back. My smile never wavered. But inside, my heart crumbled piece by piece. Imagine being erased from your own child's memories. Imagine being deliberately cut out of the story you had written, with your sweat and blood. I stayed in the shadows as flash after flash captured their perfect illusions. My son stood proudly with his bride, his friends, his new in-laws. But in every picture, there would always be a missing piece. And one day when he looked back, perhaps that absence would scream louder than my presence ever could. The ceremony pressed on, but I saw him glance at me again. His eyes flickered with something he tried to hide. Guilt. Perhaps fear. He looked away quickly, pretending I wasn't there. But guilt is not so easily erased. It claws, it burns, it whispers. And so I remained, smiling, silent, present. My very existence was enough. As night fell, the celebrations reached their peak. Music played, people danced, glasses clinked. I watched from my seat, alone yet unshaken. I could feel the bride's fury rising with every passing moment. She had wanted me erased, forgotten, hidden away. And yet here I was, calm, smiling, unmovable. Finally, she snapped. She stormed toward me, her gown sweeping across the floor like fire. Her voice cut through the music. "Why don't you leave already?" she demanded. "You've ruined enough. You've embarrassed us in front of everyone. Isn't this shame enough for you?" Gasps rippled across the hall. All eyes turned. My son froze. I looked up at her gently. "I am sorry if my face has brought you shame. But this face once sang your husband to sleep. This face once bent over him when he was sick. This face worked until it grew old, just to see him smile." Her anger faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered, spitting back, "We don't owe you anything. This is our life now. You're just old." And then it happened, my son shouted. "Enough!" His voice rang through the hall, silencing the music, freezing every guest in place. The bride stared at him in shock. His hands shook as he looked at me. For the first time that night, tears filled his eyes. "She is my mother," he said, his voice breaking. "The woman who gave me everything, and I told her she was too ugly to be here." His chest heaved. "But she's not ugly. She's the most beautiful person in this room." The crowd erupted with murmurs. Some nodded, some wiped their eyes. The bride stepped back, stunned, her face pale. My son stumbled toward me, his eyes wide with regret. He fell to his knees at my feet. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was blind. I was cruel. I let pride and shame guide me instead of love. Please, forgive me." I placed my trembling hand on his head. My smile widened, tears finally escaping my eyes. "My son," I whispered, "you don't need my forgiveness. You need to forgive yourself." The hall was silent, the weight of my words sinking deep. And in that silence my son wept. The guests were stunned. No one touched their food. No one whispered now. All eyes were on my son, kneeling before me, his tears staining the polished floor. I wanted to pull him up immediately, to tell him not to bow before me. But I let him stay there for a moment. Sometimes the weight of guilt must be felt fully before the heart can heal. He sobbed like the little boy he once was, the one who used to cry into my lap after scraping his knees. And in that moment, I no longer saw a grown man in a wedding suit. I saw my child, lost, broken, and in desperate need of his mother. The bride, still frozen beside him, finally found her voice. "Are you serious right now?" she snapped, her words sharp with disbelief. "You're ruining our wedding. For her, for her?" My son looked up at her, his eyes red, his face pale. "Yes, for her. Because without her, there would be no me. Without her sacrifices, I wouldn't be standing here. This wedding wouldn't even exist." The hall trembled with his words. The bride's mouth fell open, her anger collapsing into shock. "She is not ugly," he continued, his voice firm now. "Her face has wrinkles because she smiled at me 1,000 times when I cried. Her hands are weak because they worked day and night to raise me. If you cannot honor her, then what kind of wife will you be?" Gasps echoed again. Some guests clapped quietly, others nodded in agreement. The bride's cheeks flushed crimson. She stammered, searching for words, but none came. I reached forward and touched his shoulder. My voice was soft, but it carried through the hall. "My son, stop crying, stand up. A wedding is not a place for tears, but for love. If you have learned today what love truly means, then I am proud. That is all a mother ever wants." He rose slowly, wiping his tears, his eyes never leaving mine. In them, I saw something I thought I had lost forever. Respect. The atmosphere in the hall had completely changed. What had started as a celebration stained with hidden cruelty had turned into a lesson witnessed by every guest. People were no longer looking at me with pity, but with admiration. The bride, however, was trembling with rage. She pulled my son aside, whispering furiously, "You're humiliating me in front of everyone. Choose me or her." Her words struck the hall like lightning. Guests gasped. Some even muttered in disapproval. My son's face hardened. He turned to her slowly, his voice calm but unyielding. "Do not ask me to choose between my wife and my mother. If you love me, you must love the woman who gave me life. If you cannot, then perhaps you never loved me at all." The bride's eyes widened in disbelief. She looked around the hall, realizing she had lost not just control, but respect. I watched silently, my heart heavy yet hopeful. This was not how I wanted his wedding day to unfold. I had not come to create conflict. But sometimes truth does not wait for the perfect moment. It breaks through, raw and unstoppable. The bride stormed away, her gown trailing behind her like a storm cloud. Some guests followed her, whispering. Others stayed, clapping softly for my son's words. He turned back to me, trembling still, but with a fire in his eyes. "Mom," he whispered, "I thought you were weak. I thought you were disposable. But tonight, I learned that your silence is stronger than any anger. I almost lost you, not because of death, but because of my own blindness." I placed both my hands on his face, lifting it gently so he would look into my eyes. "My son, you never lost me." A mother's heart does not abandon her child, even when her child abandons her. But now you must carry this lesson with you. For life, for love, for your own children someday. Tears rolled down his cheeks again. But this time they were not of shame, they were of awakening. In that hall, surrounded by witnesses, my son finally understood. Beauty is not in the face. It is in sacrifice, in love, in the quiet strength of a mother who endures. And that truth, once revealed, could never be hidden again. The bride returned after some time, her face pale, her eyes darting nervously at the guests who now whispered about her arrogance. She forced a smile, pretending all was well, but the damage was already done. Respect, once lost, is not easily recovered. My son stood beside me, his arm lightly around my shoulder. For the first time in years, I felt his warmth. The warmth of a child who once clung to me when afraid. He turned to the crowd, his voice strong and steady. "This is my mother," he said. "If you honor me, you must honor her. If you respect me, you must respect her. Because every achievement of mine is built on her sacrifice. Tonight I nearly threw her away. And in doing so, I nearly threw away the very foundation of who I am." The hall erupted in applause. Some guests stood, clapping loudly. Others wiped their eyes. My heart swelled, not with pride, but with relief. For years, I had been invisible to him. Tonight, he finally saw me. The bride stayed silent, her lips pressed tight. She had no defense, no excuse. Pride had blinded her just as pride had blinded my son. But perhaps now she too would learn. As the music resumed, my son guided me to the center of the hall. "Dance with me, Mom," he said softly. I shook my head at first, embarrassed. My legs were weak, my steps unsteady. But he held me firmly, refusing to let me sit back in the shadows. And so, under the glow of lights and the watchful eyes of everyone present, I danced with my son, slow, trembling, but smiling. It wasn't just a dance. It was a silent vow, a promise renewed. A bridge rebuilt between mother and son. And though the bride stood aside, her arms folded, I hoped one day she too would learn to see not with eyes of vanity, but with eyes of love. The wedding ended, not in the perfection the bride had planned, but in something far greater, a lesson etched into every heart present. As the guests departed, many stopped to touch my hands, to bow their heads in respect. "You are the most beautiful woman here tonight," one elderly lady whispered. I smiled, my heart swelling with quiet gratitude. My son escorted me home, his hand never leaving mine. The silence between us was different now, not heavy, not painful, but peaceful. As we reached my small house, he paused, his eyes glistening once more. "Mom," he whispered, "I thought I was giving you life when I told you to stay away. But tonight, you gave me life again. You showed me what real love looks like. I will never forget this." I cupped his face gently. "My son, love built on pride is weak, but love built on respect can never break. If tonight you have learned to honor your mother, then tomorrow you will know how to honor your wife, your children, your God." He hugged me tightly, and for the first time in years, I felt the little boy I once carried return to me. The world may see wrinkles, frailty, and age as ugliness, but true ugliness is in a heart that forgets gratitude, a soul that despises sacrifice. True beauty, I realized, is in endurance, in forgiveness, in the silent strength that never dies. As he left that night, I closed my eyes and whispered a prayer, not for myself, but for him, that he would never again let pride blind him, that he would teach his own children one day what he learned from me, that a mother's love is not a decoration for a wedding. It is the foundation of a life, and to call it ugly is to blind oneself to the most beautiful gift God ever gives. I smiled, though tears wet my face. For though the night had been painful, it ended with truth. And truth, no matter how long it hides, always shines brighter than lies. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.